I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Tasia Shivalingam.
Present.
Casey Barney. Here. Harold Lamos.
Here.
Lee Sharps. Here. Fran Newton here. Public comments. We have two people on the list, Vincent Paul Magliori. And if you could please stand up and tell me what town you're from.
Hi, Madam Chairman. I'm here this evening from Bridgewater.
Okay.
And I just want to be on record as being able to speak public comment either now or subsequently at the subject matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Arlene Stoke.
Arlene Stoke, I'm from Ashland, New Hampshire. At the last Board of Selectmen meeting, there was a community action group called the Ashland Residents for Rights-Based Ordinance, which I volunteered to be the point person on. At that meeting, the board unanimously approved a couple of things. One was to partnership with our group and SELDEP, which is the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, to draft rights-based ordinance by December 31st, and the other was to hold an educational workshop jointly for the public to learn about RBOs. Since then, SELDEP has rescinded their offer to work jointly with the Board of Selectmen and the Community Action Group. And right now, the Community Action Group is working directly with SELDEP. So that's an update there. We did host an educational workshop on December 16th. And I want to thank, I saw two of the selectmen there. I want to thank them for coming to that. There is a couple other workshops coming up, one in Bristol and one in Bridgewater, that if you missed that one, you can attend for the other people that weren't able to make that. And I did want to address at the end of the last Board of Selectmen meeting, and the cameras weren't rolling at this point, but Madam Chair, you sort of were screaming for us to come back into the room when we were out in the hallway, and the gist of what I could get out of it was you possibly wanted to have a say of who was on the Community Action Group. We're an autonomous group, and we don't, we're not a committee, so we're not appointed by the Board of Selectmen. I just want to make that clear. And quite honestly, I felt that behavior was uncalled for. I felt like it was kind of bullying and abusive, honestly. You screamed at me, you screamed at this gentleman over here, and I would hope that you would apologize to all the Board of Selectmen and us as citizens, because that kind of behavior makes it very difficult for people like myself to volunteer our time out of our own volition, you know, just as a concerned citizen. It makes it unpleasant. So I would hope that you would apologize.
I think you mischaracterized what happened at that meeting, and yes, I was very angry, and yes, I did raise my voice. I don't believe I screamed at you. I was directing my anger at one of our fellow selectmen because I felt that we had been misled, not that we had to choose the committee, but that he had withheld information from the board that I thought was pertinent to the conversation. So I do apologize for raising my voice. I certainly didn't intend to scream at you. In fact, I said I don't have any issue with you because you were here and you did volunteer.
So I never met any of you before.
Yeah, I understand that, and I told you I had no issue with you volunteering. But I'm not going to speak to it any more than that because we're going to discuss this a little bit later. But your comments are appreciated.
Thank you.
And taken aboard. Okay. Moving on. Approval of minutes. These are the minutes from December 4th. Are there comments, corrections?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, I have several. First, I would recommend that we attach a copy of the warrant articles, the drafts that we actually voted on, so that when the public is reviewing the minutes, that they can understand the language of the warrant articles as they were voted on.
Okay.
Because throughout, we say we vote on
Yep,
the
yep, that's
article
fine.
as written. Further on page 6, line 23, the vote was not unanimous.
On which line? Excuse me.
Line 23.
Line
sorry.
23.
Line 23 says the vote was all in favor.
Oh, you are right.
I was opposed to
Yes,
that.
you are right about that.
Page 6, also, line 42. It currently reads that Selectman Shivalingam received a letter from Representative Migliore, but it should read that the letter was delivered by Representative Migliore and received by the entirety of the Board of Selectmen
Yes.
on November 20th, 2017.
Yes, you are correct.
Also, at the end, perhaps after public comment, I think it should read something to the of the following. Following the first public session and prior to entering the first non-public session, Michelle Sanborn, CELDEF's representative, offered to make the engagement letter available to the Board of Selectmen at the present meeting for consideration and discussion with Mrs. Sanborn present. When a consensus was taken as to whether this was of interest, Selectmen Lemos, Barney, and Shivalingam were interested in seeing the engagement letter at the present meeting. However, with input from the town administrator, Chairman Newton declined the offer on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
That is not exactly the way I recall that it happened. I wasn't even aware that there was a letter. I just heard Charlie saying, I don't need to go over to the office to get anything, and I said, no, you don't.
Yeah.
And there was no time for us to review that letter anyway, so I really don't think that
Yeah, the town
wording
administrator
belongs.
said he wasn't going to go over
That's
and
right.
get the letter that night.
And I said,
that
you
it
don't
wasn't-
have to, so.
Well, I asked.
Mr. Smith, I have a question. Were you aware that there was an offer to present the engagement letter to the Board of Selectmen at that meeting?
Yeah, I mean, she asked me to go to my office at 9 o'clock at night, print it, bring it back for the selectmen to sign it. I said to the board, generally we have any type of contracted letters get reviewed by council.
Absolutely, and I,
And you said,
yeah,
so,
absolutely.
yes, send it
We
back to
would
council.
never undertake review of a contract on such short notice.
So there's not, in the language that I just presented, there's not the implication that we were necessarily reviewing it with council, but that it was being made available for us. And Mr. Smith has acknowledged that he was aware that that was happening. Mr. Barney, were you aware that that letter was potentially available?
Excuse me, we had adjourned to non-public and people were leaving at that time. It was not really part of that meeting. I heard Charlie say, and people were milling around, I don't want to go over and get that letter tonight.
Yeah.
And because you wanted it reviewed by legal. And so it wasn't really part of the proceedings. And I object to having that in the minutes.
Well, I think
Especially, characterizing what people said.
Well, Madam Chair, I think it's critical that something of that sort be placed in there because it is true that Michelle Sanborn was here.
Yes, it's true.
And stated that she could make the engagement letter available. And especially since there seems to be concern over the time or the knowledge of the engagement letter existing, I think that it's very important that that be put in there because my understanding is that at least a majority of this board, including Town Administrator Smith, knew that that engagement letter was available to the Board of Selectmen at that time.
Yes.
So
Why don't we write it that Michelle Sanborn offered to present us with the agreement the same night, pending the administrators going back to his office to receive it, and that we did not do it.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. And there's one more item that
Okay.
I'd like to add, which is line 44 on page, what is this, page 7? Mm-hmm. So, I have quite a bit of further detail that I believe should be
what
inputted
page?
at this
What
point.
page are you on?
Page 7,
Yeah.
the second to last page, starting at line 44. First, okay, so I'll read what I have here, and then we can discuss it. So I have here, a second public session occurred between two non-public sessions. During the second session, further discussion occurred regarding RBOs, CELDEF, and the Ashland residents for a rates-based ordinance. Additionally, the names of the community members who are part of ARRBO, which I will use for the abbreviation of Ashland Residents for a Rights-Based Ordinance, were announced. Upon the announcement of the ARRBO members, Chairperson Newton and Selectman Sharps demonstrated a reconsideration of their support of the earlier decision to engage CELDEF in partnership with ARRBO. Newton stated that she believed the ARRBO to be a committee created by the Board of Selectmen and its membership to be selected by the Board of Selectmen. Selectman Shivalingam rebutted that the ARRBO is an independent community group who self-select their members, and challenged that Newton's perspective on the issue may be influenced by her personal feelings toward one of the individual members of the ARRBO. Selectman Lamos reminded the board that they had received information about CELDEF prior to the present meeting. During this conversation, several members of the public were present, including Representative Migliori, who submitted the letter, which prompted the discussion of holding an RBO workshop, as well as the CELDEF representative, Michelle Sanborn. As the conversation ensued, Selectman Shivalingam recommended that Chairman Newton recognize Michelle Sanborn or one of the members of the public to speak for the purpose of addressing Newton's concerns. Newton refused to hear from the public on the basis that the discussion was, in her opinion, not a public matter. At the end of this public session, one member of the public mentioned that a portion of this public session was recorded.
Well, you're wrong about me, first of all.
Well, what you had said was, wait a minute, don't. First of all, you did not announce to the public who was on this committee. This all arose because I heard you as you're walking out the door giving information to Mrs. Stopes, I assume, I don't even remember, where I heard other names mentioned. And for you to characterize it, that it had to do with my personal opinion of this individual, is a gross mischaracterization, because I said to you at that point, it has nothing to do with the individual. It has to do with the point that you, and apparently Harold, had spent a lot of time before the meeting arranging this whole committee, and that it wasn't apparent to us. And so my issue was with you. It wasn't with the community group. It was the fact that you, of all people, were not transparent when this discussion came up. And that's what I was angry about. I'm still not happy about that. You said, well, you didn't ask me. And you, who insists on transparency and time to review things, are now taking a completely different tack and saying that yes, I was mistaken, that I thought it was a committee. And it was explained to me very rationally by somebody that this was a community organization. But we were not fully aware of that. We were completely blindsided by CELDEF this night. Knew nothing about them, nothing about the organization, and all of a sudden we're pressed to make some kinds of decisions. The way this was done was really backdoor as far as I'm concerned, and all the conversation that had happened during that day on Monday prior to this meeting was unknown to at least 3 members of this board, and that's what frustrated me. So it wasn't a public issue, Mr. Civillingham. It was directly at you for not being transparent, and I will not let you put that into the minutes. That mischaracterizes exactly what happened.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to just reference the current draft of the minutes. The actual draft, which was prepared by Mr. Smith and the administrative assistant, who,
Wendy,
you can correct me, who then put in lines 44 to 46, Mr. Smith?
They were announced, but not in that public meeting. They were announced.
Madam Chair, I asked Mr. Smith a question. Mr. Smith, who inserted lines 44 to 46, please?
Wendy wrote them, yeah.
Okay, so my point is that she, in her own words, said that the Ashland Residents for a Rights-Based Ordinance volunteers of ARRBO were announced.
The
So I
only
was
name
using her
that she was
words.
heard was Mrs. Stope, who volunteered at that meeting. The other two names, and I don't even remember who the other one was, were not announced at that meeting. So she was making a generalization as far as I'm concerned, and she's not here to answer that. Mrs. Stope did volunteer, and therefore that was announced. Our issue came with the fact that this committee had been pre-organized unbeknownst to 3 members of the board, and I still really object to that process, and I think it does not respect the board at all.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
with due respect, I care not to be dragged in the mud of this. I was as much in the dark as you. And if I was not in the dark, I would not have called order on you two when you were in the middle of your cat fight. I had nothing to do with this, and I'm not going to be dragged into your drama.
You will refrain from using that language, Harold.
I'm
I
not being
resent
dragged into
cat
your
fight.
drama. I'm not being dragged into your drama. I had nothing to do with that.
We will take a motion. Does Mr. Civilingham's text belong in these minutes? I will take a motion.
As written.
Yeah, as written.
I'll make the motion that the text as written by myself be placed in the minutes.
Is there a second? Hearing none, motion fails. Moving on.
Can I just say something?
Yes, certainly, Lee.
All my years on boards, especially select boards, once you start getting into minutes about who said what and when it was said and all these details, they're not doing us any favors as far as getting town business done, because you can get, we had a vote 10 years ago, well, we can put in anything, let's put in anything we want. We had quotes in there. It was ridiculous. You can't do that. The board can vote to either have their minutes very brief, not to have any minutes at all legally, or to have them brief. And that's what we're supposed to do.
Thank you,
as far
Rich.
as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they're really supposed to be really brief. Their
Yes.
notes
Actions
to the
and-
motions,
And they're not supposed to have quotes or refer to people speaking.
Right.
Yeah, and you don't even have to approve them.
That's
no
right.
laws
Right.
that
You don't have to approve them either.
All right, moving on.
Madam Chair,
Could I make a comment?
No, excuse me, Mrs. Stope, but this is select board business at this point. Thank you. Yes?
Madam Chair, it's disappointing that you won't hear from Mrs. Stokes. She was present at a majority of that conversation, as was another member of the public here. But I would like to say that you are essentially stating that I'm not interested in being transparent, yet I'm interested in filling in the minutes for the sake of transparency. That's my final comment on this.
Thank you. Moving on. Consent agenda for the week of December 5th, accounts payable, $4,000.
Madam Chair, shouldn't we vote to approve or not approve?
Oh, excuse
the
me.
minutes?
All right, the minutes as amended. Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll do that.
Second.
I'll second said motion.
All in favor? Any further discussion?
I've expressed.
Yes, you've expressed that.
I think
Is there
that
any
there are
further
items missing
discussion?
from the
Any further
Minutes?
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
nay.
Okay. Consent agenda. We have the accounts payable for $475,542, the payroll manifest of $33,089, and December 11th payroll manifest is $16,505. And I will pass these this way for signature, and then you can return them the other way. Charlie, you have something under department heads?
The employees were hoping to get together to have a Christmas party before the holiday, 12 o'clock, yep, this Friday at the Booster Club.
Okay.
That's okay with the board.
Is there any objection? I think that's great. Wish them all a Merry Christmas from me. And- Okay, anything else, Charlie?
Yep, we had unfortunately a resignation from the planning board. Read this letter. The planning board is informing you in the select board that Carol Fucarell has resigned from the planning board effective December 7th, 2018. Carol was a well-reasoned and well-informed contributor to our discussions and decisions. We thank her for her valued service to the planning board. The planning board now has 2 openings for regular members and still 3 openings for alternate members from Marty and Badger, the vice chair.
Thank you, Charlie.
Came
Yes,
in today.
Carol will be missed. She really did a lot of hard work on the planning board, a lot of research, so she will be missed.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
We have some letters on the manifest desk that we're sending out in appreciation for those that served on the Ashland 4th of July committee.
yes.
Is it possible to send out a letter to Mrs. Fupareel and others who have also served the town?
It's not our normal practice, but I think that's up to the planning board to do.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's up to the planning board to send a letter, and they may already have, for all I know.
Okay, my project list?
Yes, project
All right.
list.
All right, so the Transportation Alternative Program grant, TAP grant, otherwise known as Sidewalk Project, up Route 3 and 25, is moving along great. We're almost, me, KV Partners, the engineer, and NHDOT, almost have the scope of work done and begin negotiations for the fee.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's well on its way.
Very exciting.
The Thompson Street Road Reconstruction Project, that warrant article was approved by the board. Next step is the public hearing that hopefully we can schedule tonight. We do have to have a public hearing by January 9th.
Okay.
That would be take that back. 9th is the last day we can announce. 16th is the last day you can have a public hearing.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The GIS, Geographic Information System mapping, that was, the warrant article was approved by the board. That will go to the warrant. LW Packard Mill site, the Novus engineer is still working on the field work. They were caught up because of the rain that we got last month. So I don't know. I don't think
Yeah,
it's
I think
progress
the
any
only
further.
thing that's left is to finish up the ground water samples, but
Yeah.
hopefully we'll hear that soon.
The town building telecommunications, this is our installation of fiber optic cable into the town office. That one got hung up a little bit. The modem that First Light installed, they actually installed it in my office, and it was very loud. That was distracting to employees. And I think the public, when they came in, we asked them to move it. They moved it into the other room. That other room needs power, so we have to get an outlet
It doesn't have
installed.
power?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So, yeah. The Lakes Region Planning Commission in the road paving plan, me and Craig had a meeting with them 2 weeks ago. That is pretty much done. They have provided us with, I guess you can say, a beta assessment of what roads can be paved, on how much money that we would have budgeted for, etc. They gave all the roads in town a paving condition index, which is basically a grade from 0 to 100, with 100 being the best.
Do we have any 100 roads?
What's that?
Do we have any 100 roads?
No, but it was pretty accurate.
Okay,
we
that's
do?
good.
Okay, it was pretty accurate.
Hopefully River Street, we just paved
They
that
said
one.
River Street came up in at 94.
Good.
The worst street, I guess anyone want to guess?
Ah, Thompson Street, Smith
Thompson
Hill.
Street, yep. Thompson Street got the worst grade. Yeah, but they were able to give us, kind of like a gauge on how much it would cost. I challenged them to see how much it would cost to chip seal North Ashland Road, and it was within $2,000
Of what we had already paid.
what we had already paid.
That's fantastic.
What we already
That's
paid.
great. Okay.
So we don't have direct access to the software. They're sort of not letting too many people put their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak.
Yes.
But we can use it if we need to say, we want to. What can we get done next year?
Yep.
So, I don't know, Craig, you have any other further comments?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of roads, as you guys know, that are pretty bad. Thompson Street being the worst one on the list, number one. So it's all gonna depend on what happens with Thompson Street, what we,
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so if we don't tackle Thompson Street, there's a bunch of others we can tackle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
But yeah, it's available, the list, if you guys wanna see it.
Yeah, that's would be nice to have a copy of
It's
that.
really good,
Yeah,
it's really good information.
great, thank you, Greg.
Okay, that's all I have.
What about the culverts?
The culverts, she didn't update us on that one.
Okay.
That was just more of a,
Is
so
it an inventory? Or?
it's an inventory of where all the culverts are.
Okay.
And he's got a I think they give us a map.
It's an inventory on how the condition, and
Okay.
there aren't many that are bad. They're
Oh, that's good to know.
They're really good shape.
Excellent.
The ones that were bad, we've already replaced them
Yeah, yeah.
last year, so.
You know, this is something that can ultimately go on the GIS mapping.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I know that Water and Sewer has one up and running, and they'd be happy to put that information in their map at this point, just as a placeholder, so
Sure.
that would be good. Thank you.
Yep.
Did they happen to grade the bridges on our roads as well, like Winter Street Bridge?
No bridges. I don't believe so.
Doesn't the state do bridges?
The state, I have a report, the state just did a report on the
Yeah.
covered bridge.
The cover
Okay.
bridge, which is fine.
What
I
about
believe
Winter
this is-
Street?
Yeah, we had concern last
nothing on
winter,
that yet.
winter.
Nothing, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
So,
Moving on, Riverwalk maintenance? Oh, no, electric
That's it.
department?
No,
That's
there's
it,
no
that's it,
more
nothing,
that's it,
no
no
other
more
updates?
updates, yeah.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
yeah.
Okay. New business. We have with us a guest, Mr. Omar Ahern, our Grafton County Commissioner, who's going to give us an update on what's going on in Grafton County. Thank you, Mr. Ahern.
Madam Chairperson, may it please the board. Looking at your agenda, the condition of the weather out there, this is only a courtesy call on my part. Why don't I come back another night? It'll be no problem. You've got a lot of people here. I'm just concerned about the condition of the roads.
Okay.
I don't mind coming back, okay?
That's
I'm
fine.
tickled pink to come and listen. I'll sit, but I think it's probably best for all concerned that I sit down and just keep listening.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Merry
much,
Christmas,
Mr. Ahern, and to
everyone.
you as
Merry
well.
Christmas.
And we look forward to your next visit. Okay, Charlie, financial consultant services?
Okay. As many know, we have an open position with our finance officer. We have had some difficulty being able to fill that position. This is I would say a short time fill-in, so to speak. We have the audit coming up at the end of the year, and we need help to make sure we can get through the audit.
Yep.
And making sure all of our books are in order.
Yep.
Well, this is a consultant that will come in to help us make sure all of our books are in order and get us through the audit, get us into the new year, and then we can decide what are we going to do next year, where we're going to go with the position.
Right.
Mr. Colby was referred by another CPA. He was referred by BMSI. That's one of the aspects that I would recommend to move forward with him, is that his knowledge of BMSI, which is very important. That's our accountant software.
Right.
I did reach out to 2 other consultants. One had experience with BMSI, had to step away. They were short-staffed, and the other didn't have the BMSI experience.
Is he available immediately?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so this would get us through the audit.
Yep.
But obviously, we still need to look for a permanent financial officer.
Yep.
And in terms of the cost, I calculated that in the hours that he said it would be 75 to 110
Okay, so that
hours, that's
was-
6,750 to
That was,
9,900.
that he mistakenly wrote that. He was under the impression that he was also going to do electric and water and sewer.
Oh,
And I
okay.
was, no.
Oh, okay, okay.
No. My thought was he'll come in one day to make sure everything is been properly reported,
Yeah.
with the IRS, the
Yeah.
Hampshire retirement system, your payroll taxes are paid, and then, after that, maybe 4 or 5 hours.
So what is the new hour estimate?
He said at least half of that. At least
Half of that? Okay, we should probably get that correction made before we sign anything, I would think.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Smith, so I see that the per hour cost is $90 per hour. How does that compare to our last financial consultants? Not our employee, but the last
No, I think
independent
it's
consultant.
65. Yeah, 65. Yeah.
And have you looked at other?
Yep, the other
competing-
one was 110. Yep. The highest one was 110.
We're kind of caught in bind here. This is like the worst time of year
The other
to be
consultant
without.
was not a CPA either.
Yeah,
Do you think this gentleman will be able to help us square us up away with IRS with no problem?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
That's a big.
Yep. BMSI does our payroll. He was referred by BMSI.
how does this fit in with our current budget?
We have, let's see, I actually printed it out today. We have, There's about 12,000 left.
So we have enough to cover it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, it's only, I think, I might, he said whatever I needed him for.
Yeah.
I think, one full day to make sure everything's in order.
Yeah.
To see how things were left off previously.
Okay.
And then, maybe 4 hours a week.
Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to express that it's disappointing that we're in this situation. I think that if the relationship or the business agreement that had been the understanding with the previous consultants was navigated better, that we would not be in this situation.
No comment.
Go ahead. Any
No.
other questions?
I guess at this point, if there are no further questions, I will entertain a motion to approve this short-term fix pending a correction of the contract to reflect the hours that will be actually bid on.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Since the number of hours directly impacts the total consideration that we're giving, I don't feel comfortable voting on this contract without that number being firm first.
Well, I think we have an upper limit in this one, which we still can finance. It's going to be something less than $9,900, because that was an overestimate, so.
Yeah, it's just an estimate.
It's just an estimate.
It's just an estimate on.
It could be more than even he estimates once it gets in here and finds that there's a mess, so, we'll have to just agree to take that risk, I would think. But
Yeah, he's not gonna be anywhere
Yeah.
near that.
no, I hope not. Hopefully we're in good enough shape that he can take care of this stuff, so. Any further discussion? All those in favor of hiring Mr. Colby, a CPA, to fill this temporary role, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. Okay. I am going to change the agenda a little bit because I think we ought to do these appointments first. First, we have an Ashland Zoning Board of Adjustment appointment. Mr. Alan Silly has volunteered to be an alternate.
Madam Chair, I'd like to recuse myself for this discussion.
Fine. Doesn't matter. The letter says, December 4th, I would like to be considered for a position on the Ashland Zoning Board of Adjustment. I believe that my 30 years of service to the town of Ashland in voluntary appointed and elected positions would be helpful to the present board. Thank you for your consideration, Alan Silly. Can I have a motion to approve Alan Silly's appointment to the ZBA as an alternate?
Is this in conflict with is this okay for him to be on this?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Eli was on it for years when he was still the Water and Sewer Commissioner.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
as long as, he doesn't vote on anything that directly affects water and sewer. Obviously, he'd have to recuse himself.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Yes.
If I see that there's also some other warrant articles in front of us, now by some chance, if this did become a elected position, would that then be a conflict because he would be two elected officials at the same time?
I don't know about that. I
Yeah,
mean,
it depends on when his.
It depends on when his term is ended.
Yeah.
And
I'm
if
just
that.
thinking down the road.
Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
I think usually once those, if, for example, we passed a warrant article, that they'd be elected the
Yeah.
whole year anyway.
You got a whole year.
So,
So that's what I mean, his term might be,
Yeah.
would be up.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
okay. All those in favor of the appointment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, is Alan here? Alan is not here. If you could, do you have the
Contact
thing
him.
that we could sign?
I don't, because Pat's
Okay.
has been out of the
Oh,
office.
all right, so if you put that on the desk, we will come in and
Yep.
sign it and let Mr. Silly know that he can come in to get sworn in at some point.
You're gonna read the Nichols?
Yeah, and the next one has to do with our Emergency Management Director. This is to the Ashland Board of Selectmen. Please be advised that as of December 30th, 2017, I'm resigning my position as Co-Emergency Management Director. It has been a valuable experience of which I've enjoyed. Steve Heath, Co-Director, has been, and I'm sure going forward will be, a tremendous asset to the town. Whether you appoint another co-director or leave Steve as director, it is in your hands. Sincerely, Lee Nichols. Steve, would you like to make any comments on that? Are we going to have a co-director? I think we have to accept Mr. Nichols' resignation with regret.
I don't anticipate having a code of that.
Okay. So,
It's up to the board.
so at this point, I would take a motion to appoint Steve Heath as Director of Emergency Management.
I'll make that motion.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, congratulations, Steve.
Is deputy?
Well, did you want to talk about your deputy?
Yeah,
Do you want to-
I'm right now recommending Deputy Fire Chief Bob Bousquet for the Deputy EMD position.
Okay.
He's had the required ICS classes and was capable of carrying on or not.
Okay, so this is deputy as opposed to co-director?
Yes.
You and Lee
Yes.
had, okay, okay, fine. In that case, can I have a motion to appoint Bousquet as Deputy Director of EMD?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just for the people out in TV land, this is your second in charge, correct, when you're not in town?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Steve. All right. Contract approval process. So I want to read this because I wanted to make sure I got the sequence of events right, so please forgive me for reading this, but I think we need to understand what happens so we know where we need to go from here. We need to follow our established process for reviewing and signing contracts and agreements. Normally, contracts, proposals, agreements, and so forth are presented to the board in public during a meeting. In advance of a meeting, the TA provides us with a copy of any such agreement so that we have time to review it. When appropriate, the TA sends contracts to legal for review before we discuss them. At the meeting, after appropriate discussion, the contract or agreement is voted on. At our meeting 2 weeks ago, the agenda listed the topic of rights-based ordinances, or RBOs. This topic arose after the board received a letter from our state representative who attended the meeting. What came as a surprise to most of the board was the presence of the community group called CELDEF. The spokeswoman for the group proceeded to explain how the group could help to write such an RBO, in this case to stop Northern Pass. After some confusing conversation, an education presentation was proposed and an agreement was mentioned. CELDEF emailed the agreement to our TA late that night, 11 p.m. Following procedure the next day, the TA forwarded it to our attorney for review. Our attorney immediately provided to the entire board several reasons why this letter of agreement should not be signed. In short, signing such a contract to create an RBO not based in constitutional law, if passed and enforced, could subject the town to expensive litigation. In addition, individual members of the board could be subject to litigation as well. I instructed the TA not to put the agreement in the signature folder until the board had a chance to review and discuss the agreement and our attorney's opinion in public. Mr. Smith did not put the agreement in the folder. Either Selectman Shivalingam or Lamos, however, printed out the agreement. Selectman Shivalingam signed it, as did Selectman Lamos, and left it in the Selectman's folder for additional signatures the day after the meeting. At some point thereafter, having perhaps thought better of his action, Mr. Lamos went into the office to black out his signature and initials. I believe that what happened in this case is contrary to our established rules of procedure. Selectman Shivalingam in particular has been adamant in the past that all items must be presented to the board well in advance, including 2-sentence thank you notes to town businesses for contributions. This 7-page agreement, actually a contract since it involved a payment to CELDEF, deserved at the very least legal and public board review given the potential serious consequences for implementation. While the CELDEF issue may be moot at this point since they withdrew their agreement, the issues involved in the signature process demand scrutiny. As selectmen, we took an oath of office to uphold the laws of the state of New Hampshire and the town of Ashland. We also are expected to always act in the best interests of the town. Signing any agreements, let alone such significant ones with potential risk, prior to public board discussion and contrary to legal advice, strikes me as a direct conflict to that oath and the expectations that we are acting in the best interests of the town. I urge the board to adhere to our established process and to practice at all times transparency and public discourse.
Nice.
Madam Chair.
Comments? Yes.
Thank you for your comments. I think that one of the things that's happening is that you're mistaking transparency or misleading for your own lack of self-education around it. The issues of the RBO, information about the RBO and CELDEF was administered to the entirety of the board back in the spring by me. I gave it to each and every one of you. It's a public document since it was given to all of you, and a member of the public, if they so wish, would be able to, under 91A, go and get a copy of that document. Further, the letter that was received by us on November 20th that was submitted by Representative Migliore clearly had contact information not only for himself, but also for CELDEF. That letter was received on November 20th. Our meeting that you are referring to occurred on December 4th. That was 2 weeks for you to, any member of this board, to read that letter and to do research into what CELDEF is, how they operate, and so forth. Further, at that meeting, there was a representative from CELDEF present. There were members of the community that are educated and knowledgeable in CELDEF and in RBOs. There were, in fact, 3 representatives from our state legislature that are currently considering a constitutional amendment that would support RBOs. And they were present to discuss this with you as well. At that meeting, I was happy to answer any questions that were asked of me, and I feel that I did. And I feel that I addressed all of the concerns that were brought to my attention. In terms of signing that document, I'll remind you that there was a vote taken by the board to approve engaging CELDEF. Okay? Signing of that engagement letter and the $1 was, along with it, is an ancillary ministerial duty to carry out that approval vote. I went to Mr. Smith. He did not inform me that you actually asked him not to put it on the manifest desk. And I asked him, when is this letter going to be put on the manifest desk? Because it's each of our duties as selectmen to determine in our own conscience and our duty in accordance with our oath of office whether or not to sign the engagement letter as we were given permission to do by that vote. I asked Mr. Smith, in lieu of you, I actually asked him, are you going to provide a copy of the engagement letter for signing? My understanding is he was kind of baffled as to what to do. That was my interpretation.
You want me to talk?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
One moment, can I finish?
Sure, go
first,
right ahead.
So I then consequently asked Mr. Smith if I was able to sign the letter, and he said yes. So I did print out a copy to fulfill that ministerial ancillary act of carrying out that motion that was approved unanimously. I printed out the letter and signed it, and I passed it to Mr. Lemos, who expressed his intent to sign it and to put it on the manifest desk at the town office. I stand by my signature on that. I believe that what I did was in accordance with my oath of office. I believe I am acting and was acting in the best interest of the citizens of this town and of the state of New Hampshire. And further, I do believe that my actions were in accordance with the Constitution of New Hampshire. I went to the workshop. I was present at the workshop with Selectman Lemos and several other members of the public. 3 members of this board, Selectman Newton included, were not at that workshop. So I would find it difficult that any of the selectmen not at that workshop would actually be able to question the adherence to my oath. So that's all I have to say at this time. Thank you.
Charlie, would you care to say anything before I jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, that whole letter really put myself in a bind, so to speak. I don't think there's anything wrong with you. You all received the letter. You know, if you felt passionate enough to sign it, that's fine. I didn't find anything that says that you couldn't. I don't believe it was the right process. To me, the way we do things is we put it on we pass it to you to read before the meeting, ask questions if you have of me or council or staff, whatnot, and then we put it on the agenda, we put it in the packet, and we put it out there so the public can see it. The public can come, sign up for public comment, voice their opinion about it, and then, you know, the board votes, and then you sign. None of that was done here. None of it was done here. And furthermore, I would say, you know, I had concerns about that if that went through, because they were asking for an appropriation. There was never an appropriation. Furthermore, that contract really put me in a bind because, well, first of all, so everyone knows, they used my name personally, which I don't appreciate, because then it looked like I was tied to this political activism, whatever you want to say, organization. You know, in my profession, we are supposed to be politically neutral. That didn't do me any good when I found out my name was on a website, and then they, you know, went ahead and put my name in the newspaper. I work for the taxpayers of the town. Not every taxpayer in the town wanted to see us engaged with this organization. You know, and I would caution the board going forward that, you know, your decisions we carry out, but it also, you know, can put us in a bind. You know, and that one, this put me in a bind.
And
professionally.
especially given the feedback we got from our attorney, which convinced me that I wanted no part of it, and we would be risking the town's finances, not to mention our own personal finances. I've highlighted some of his comments. He said, it's clearly intended to use Ashland as a guinea pig by involving it in costly litigation to try to defend an ordinance which is clearly unconstitutional. I understand Representative Migliore is trying to get a constitutional amendment, and when that happens, it's a whole different discussion, but right now it's not there. And it says, there does not seem to be any good faith argument such that an ordinance can be legally adopted in New Hampshire. And I'm only highlighting some of these things. He mentioned a caution that the town, or even town officials personally, might be found responsible for the payment of legal fees or damages for authorizing the continuation of the defense of such a law, or this organization to which the selectmen, on behalf of the taxpayers of Ashland, are being asked to bind themselves, works to advance creative theories of law, quote unquote, none of which are yet recognized by most American courts of law. And he says that the state has established, and municipalities are political subdivision of the state, which have only the authority that the state legislatively chooses to delegate to them. We do not have home rule, no matter how much some people may want it. Municipalities are prevented from regulating the same subject matter in any way that would frustrate the state's efforts. And as you're aware, Northern Pass, as much as we hate it, is a state effort. It is not an Ashland effort. Therefore, the adoption of a local ordinance which takes the position that certain state laws or state permits do not apply to the town of Ashland, as I have seen in so-called rights-based ordinances proposed in prior years and doomed to failure. Again, this was enough to convince me that this was a can of worms that we certainly did not want to open. And yes, I did not go to the CELDEF presentation. Having read the ordinances that they've written for other towns, I was totally turned off by what they had written, and I was personally pleased that they withdrew their help of support. We did not agree to sign that agreement. We agreed to engage with them, but we never agreed to sign something. And I said it that night, I don't sign anything until I've read it. And I hadn't read it until the next day. And then based on what the attorney said, that was all I needed. And I'm just very concerned that it was signed contrary to the laws of the state of New Hampshire, to which we have pledged, and contrary to our usual procedure. And that's all I'm talking about. We have always brought contracts forth in the public view, and they've always been reviewed by legal before we vote on them. And this was done differently. And if you feel strongly you wanted to sign that, I'm not going to say anything. But I think we need to go back to the policy that we've been adopting and stop promoting our own personal agendas.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I speak?
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
my understanding after reviewing NHMA material, New Hampshire Municipal Association material, is that the Board of Selectmen has the sole discretion as to the counsel that it seeks out for any reason, including education. And in this case, that was what was being offered, was essentially legal education in terms of on a limited basis for the purpose of drafting a rights-based ordinance. So that's, and it does not appear that any contract, or in this case an engagement letter, would need to be signed at a separate meeting, but that it could reasonably be included as a ministerial ancillary act in fulfillment of a decision. So one of the things that occurred was that after that vote went through, rather than you, Madam Chair, exercising your singular right not to sign the engagement letter, instead what you did was you attempted to subvert the process and prevent the entire board from having access to the letter for the purpose of signing it.
That's not true.
Madam Chair actually did say that she asked Mr. Smith not to place the engagement letter on the manifest desk. That is a concerning interference with following through, bringing into action the decision of this board, which is a legal action. So when I saw that the chairman was essentially subverting the democratic process and not allowing the board here to, at their own individual discretion, in accordance with their duty and fulfilling their oath, that it was not being permitted to them the opportunity to sign that engagement letter.
Well, she asked. I didn't
saw it on the desk.
Yeah.
It was on
Asked
the
who?
desk.
Did she ask the
It
Board of
was on the
Selectmen?
desk.
No, I asked Charlie, not,
It appeared
But I didn't listen.
because it needed to be reviewed by legal and it needed to be
Yes.
discussed by the
May I
board. And I
finish?
was afraid that putting it there would inadvertently lead
But
to
it was
signatures.
on the desk.
It was
It was
on
on
the
the
desk. It
desk.
stayed
Madam
there the
Chair,
whole
may I
week.
finish?
Yes.
So consequently, when Mr. Smith did not clearly state that he would place the engagement letter on the desk, and now I know that that's because of his conversation with you, yes.
No.
I took it upon myself to work to fulfill the decision of that board in my own capacity, acting only as an individual
Yeah.
member of this board. I put my signature on that. And then I passed it to Mr. Lamos. And it's true. And I stand by that action. I believe it was the right thing to do.
That's fine, and again, I stand by the fact that it was not discussed by the board, and therefore it was a contract that was signed prior to the board's buy-in, and subsequent to legal, very definite warnings not to sign it.
Madam Chair,
So,
I do
and
just-
you may think it's not a contract and that we had agreed to it. We didn't agree to that letter of engagement, quote, contract. We agreed to engage with them such that they presented their education and we would explore, you know, this a letter of agreement. Once the letter of agreement came, as far as I'm concerned, all bets were off.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to add for the public too, that I did also review the same feedback that the attorney gave. And I continued to do research, and I have also since then even gone to the workshop. It is disappointing that you did not attend the workshop. After, you know, you took into account our council's opinion, which is great. I hear, you know, the prudence in doing that, but I think it would have also been helpful had you and the rest of the board attended the workshop so that you could also hear the other side of this.
I didn't attend the workshop, but I did do tremendous amount of research into this organization, not only in New Hampshire, but nationwide. And everything I read led me to believe this was nobody I wanted to engage with, and that was my personal decision. There was nothing else I cared to learn because I had seen enough. And I was looking at the best interests of the town. I do not want to engage a group that's going to set us up for failure. And that's my opinion. Yes, Lee?
I wasn't here Saturday, but I wanted to respond to something the attorney said here about also clearly intended to use Ashland as a guinea pig by involving it in costly litigation to try and defend an ordinance which is clearly unconstitutional. I just want to know if representative or Mr. Cillian can answer. Plymouth, 3 months ago, they've held 2 workshops, and I believe you went to one of them, an educational workshop. They had a citizen group that's been formed for 3 months. Mr. Bolton sat here at the meeting where Ms. Sanborn said she could have that agreement for us that night, when Plymouth has not yet had their agreement given to them. Why were they, who has done all the educational work, they had their citizens group 3 months ahead of time, why are they still waiting for an agreement when we had access to it that very night?
I mean, I don't know, did they?
If you'd like.
Well, that's up to her.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So my understanding is that Plymouth already adopted a rights-based ordinance last year. And there was some technical thing that it was advisory, and I'm not real good at this stuff, so bear with me. And so this year they are putting it forth again without the advisory term on it. So their process may be different from ours.
They told me it wasn't, but
That's what I.
but that was their a representative from their committee.
That's what I've been told by the person who's heading up the citizens.
Yep.
So I don't know if that information's helpful, but.
Okay.
Again, the point of what I'm trying to say is that we as a board need to adhere to the long-established processes that we have always followed, and you can't, unanimously or unilaterally declare that this wasn't one of those contracts, that this was something we had agreed to, when clearly that's not true. It was your opinion that it was only ancillary. It is my opinion, and it is the legal opinion, that this represented a contract that could potentially put the town in financial jeopardy, not to mention my own personal finances. But again, I think that we need to go back to ensuring, if you vote for it, that's fine, but it has to be discussed as a board. That agreement is what I'm taking issue with. That agreement, which I had great issue with, and as did our lawyer, was signed prior to a discussion on the board. And it didn't matter what CELDEF said to us that night. We didn't have the wording for the agreement, and I clearly said that night, I will not sign anything until I see wording. And I think the board should adhere to that going forward. Thoughts? Anybody else?
I mean, Madam Chair, I think that, governance is kind of an organic process. You can't anticipate when somebody's, what everybody's going to do and what's going to arise. I would agree with you also that there, having a procedure in place for the signing of engagement letters or contracts is, understandable. I would also say, too, that it's understandable that when the board takes a vote and makes a decision, that the materials that are provided to carry out that decision be made available to the entirety of the board for their individual review and potential acceptance.
And it was by email. We all got a copy. We all got a copy. The only thing I was trying to prevent was somebody inadvertently signing it in advance of our process of discussing it and in advance of legal opinion. That was the only thing. You all had access to this agreement that next day along with the legal opinions. And it should have been discussed in public before any signatures went on it. You have that right, but I think it's not a very good practice to sign things until you've found out how the rest of the board feels. So
yeah, and it was a recommendation from Fran. It wasn't a directive.
No, I couldn't direct you. You don't report to me.
Yes, that I didn't fall. That know, I didn't even have a chance to put it out there because you guys had it in the office the next day.
I expressed my concerns to you that it would just get signed along with everything else.
Yes,
and clearly, that got ignored, and somebody else printed it out, and I didn't take it out. Mr. Lamos signed it, and then he crossed his name off. For whatever reason, I don't really care. But, it was there for the entire week.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Smith, one thing that I want to clarify is that I spoke to you on the phone, and I asked you if you were going to put that out there for signing.
Yeah.
You did not indicate to me that you would do that.
Yeah. Because I wasn't sure. I was still waiting to hear back from legal. So I wasn't.
Why would you? Let me ask you a follow-up question.
Sure.
What makes you feel as the town administrator, that you
Yeah.
have the ability to not put a document on the desk that was given to the Board of Selectmen
Yeah.
for consideration. Because here's the thing,
Sure.
all of us are adults, all of us are elected officials, all of us have our own duty to collect the information, including legal advice, and then make the decision that we feel is best for the town.
Yeah.
The problem that I have in this is that I feel that there was some intervention in there
Right.
that was essentially attempted at, it was an attempt to stop the Board of Selectmen
Yeah.
from fulfilling or potentially fulfilling the decision that was made.
Yeah.
But there was no decision made. Again, I come back to that. You keep saying
Yeah.
we'd made a decision.
We
We
did.
had not made a decision on the letter of agreement. We had made a decision to engage with them. But until we saw that wording, there was nothing to be signed. There was only something to be discussed. And I think you're parsing words here. Was not an agreement to sign the letter because that, we hadn't seen it. And I said that night, and I continue to say, I don't sign anything without reading it. And you have said that many, many times. You want 2 or 3 days to review things. But this all of a sudden could get signed. So I think we're splitting hairs. Yes, Lee?
No, you're right about the process that we look at things and then come back and discuss them. But also we need to remember that one selectman cannot act on his own.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it should have been the entire, if we were all going to look at it and read it, then it should have been the board saying, yes, we all want to look at that, would you put it on the desk? Consensus or a vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, put it on the desk, and then ask Charlie to do it. One selectman doesn't have a right to act on his own.
Madam Chair.
That's right.
Yes.
So one of the things that I want to clarify is while you are relying on the opinion of one attorney, my actions have legal backing in terms of what I did, I assure you. So, we have a difference of opinion here in terms of how it should be, how the procedure should have gone. But I don't, I feel that there's an attempt on your part to spin it as if your opinion on this is the only opinion.
No, it is not my
the only
opinion. It is our town attorney, who is a municipal attorney.
And also, I would remind you that we are also members of NHMA.
Yes.
And we have each of us the capacity to call up and speak with the council and to ask questions as well.
Charlie,
Okay?
did you not call NHMA at some
Individually.
point?
And
on this
contacted
rights-based
them.
ordinance?
I contacted them, Madam Chair, and I asked specifically about this. So that's why I feel very comfortable about my decision.
Well, I'm glad you feel comfortable with it. I'm just asking the board as a whole, are you comfortable with the way this went down? And if you're not, then we should at least make some concessions going forward that we need to adopt this process. So that one person can't make an opinion that it's not a contract, that we should discuss all these things in public. And if appropriate, get our council's opinion.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Why, if this was such a concern, why did you not call an emergency meeting? It's been 2 weeks. I actually asked Mr. Smith, as soon as he started to convey to me that there was some reservation about signing the engagement letter, I asked him, is the chairperson going to call a meeting? And he told me the chairperson does not intend to call a meeting. I asked him, how can we have a meeting? What is the process? Can we have a majority of the board call a meeting? He said that 2 selectmen can request the chairperson. I requested through Mr. Smith that there be a meeting. I hope that that request was passed on to you. I think that part of what I'm getting at here is if this was such a concern, why wasn't there an emergency meeting called almost immediately to just kind of nip it in the bud?
There are specific rules for calling an emergency meeting, and I don't think that
Didn't strike me as an emergency.
I don't think that
It was not an emergency. And I think that was said that night,
criteria.
I know that in terms of Northern Pass, people feel pressure that, we got to get this thing moving. I know you wanted to set up a special town meeting that night, but I didn't see this as an emergency. And, and I only got one request, so that was that. And then once CELDEF withdrew their support, it was a moot point.
Yeah.
But all that said, I still come back to, we need to adhere to our process. And I'm not going to keep beating this up. We can either have a consensus or we can have a motion.
What are you asking for?
I'm asking to adhere to our previously established process of reviewing and signing contracts and agreements in public and have a discussion in public before we sign them.
But Madam Chair, when was that established? Where?
It's been what we've done since you joined this board. At your insistence, I might
Can
say.
you, I mean, show me where it is. I'm interested.
I said it's an established process, and that's why I want to make sure that it becomes codified in our agreement here, because we've been doing it this way, but this was apparently
You
done.
should want that.
that.
And would you also agree that if we make a motion to carry out a decision, that you will not interfere with that?
You didn't make a motion to carry out a decision, and I didn't interfere with that motion. I only interfered with the signing of this letter, and why do we have to keep saying that? I only suggested to Charlie that this represented a whole new part of the ballgame. This was information that we did not have the night of the meeting. And I got to end this discussion. We have a lot of other more important business to do. So could I have a motion? May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we proceed as we have in the past as far as our order for looking at contracts, discussing them, and signing them in public.
Is there a second?
Do we even really need to put this in?
Yes, we do, apparently. Casey, I'm sorry.
I agree, Mr. Barney.
Otherwise, we'll be beating this up from now till doomsday, so let's just settle it.
I agree with you, Mr. Barney. I don't think that it needs to be put in a motion. I think that there needs to be some level of reasonable fluidity. Yes, I do agree with Mrs. Newton that in most cases it is prudent. However, I think that Selectman Newton is not looking at the details of this particular situation.
I'm exactly looking at the details.
Well, we need to follow procedure,
We
and
do
if we
need to
have
follow
to make a
procedure.
motion, then that's what we have to do.
Exactly. I wanted a consensus, but we don't seem to be getting off
Consensus is fine
square
with
one.
me.
Which point are we on our agenda?
Right, well,
Are we on A or B in selectmen items? Because it seems like it's both.
Contract.
I think that
we're
that's a good
on
point.
contract process. That's all I wanted to talk about was the contract
So we
process.
still have to hit B.
Yes, we still have to hit B.
All right,
Isn't that
let's-
fun?
Let's move on.
Okay, are you going to second this motion?
I'll second the motion.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. So, we now have a procedure. Now, we get into the real fun. Rights-based ordinances.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would recommend that we have dealt with this quite enough. I think we've, I don't really see much more benefit coming from this, unfortunately.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's really unfortunate. It's unfortunate. That's all I can leave it at. It is gravely unfortunate, and I think that we have done the town and the people a grave disservice.
Okay.
You know, the only thing that I would add to what has been spoken here is that it was very unfortunate to see, Madam Chair, you conduct yourself in an unprofessional manner at the last meeting. And I think that that has probably inadvertently on your part, inadvertently colored this entire process.
Very likely. Very likely, Mr.
She
Sibling.
apologized.
The level of contention
Very
that
likely.
really did not need to be here.
Fine. So we're going to move on to,
Yes.
okay, warrant article discussion? Elected zoning board of adjustment officials.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
It's pretty self-explanatory. Mr. Smith and I, as the consensus of the board permitted, we spoke about drafted a warrant article, to have the zoning board of adjustment members elected.
Okay, is there a motion to put this on the warrant?
Yes, I will move that we place the warrant article as written here in the draft format on the warrant for March.
Is there a second?
Second set motion.
Discussion.
So,
We have a problem enough as it is finding volunteers.
I would agree with
I don't know
you.
why anyone would think that this is going to be easier to find people who want to run, because we have problems finding people who run in every single seat that's
Absolutely.
vacant.
We had two vacant select board for which we had one person. We have several budget committee positions,
Planning board.
we've had vacancies on the ZBA, and we had to go beat the drum to get somebody to join. We now have 2 vacancies on the planning board. Frankly, if I had to then campaign for a position, I probably wouldn't be much interested in doing it. Sometimes people just like to come up and say, you know, I'd really like to serve on the planning board sometime. Well, you know, put your name in, and, you know, and everybody has a right to do that. So I don't see that this is going to solve a problem. I think, my personal opinion, will make it worse. Casey?
I have a couple questions. So
Sure.
this is one of the boards where we have issues with filling everything, right?
Well, right now, we're full again.
Okay,
But it has
We're
been,
one
yes.
alternate short, I believe.
Yeah.
okay. So,
Oh,
but in the past,
zoning.
we've had issues.
This is zoning, yeah.
In the past, we've had issues filling
Yeah.
boards.
We have issues filling all boards.
Well, and
Yeah.
if we...
We've
if
had
it goes-
full ZBAs in the past, and then in the last couple of years, people dropped out for whatever reason, and we ended up at one meeting without a quorum, and so that's when it became an emergency.
So that's my question, is
Yeah.
if it moves to elected, they still can step down whenever, right?
Absolutely.
So we're just gonna spend the money to
Absolutely.
do an election and then...
Right, and have
Then
people,
we'll still
you
step
know,
down
campaign.
potentially.
Exactly.
All right, that's the issue I see with it.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think that allowing people to run for these positions actually encourages greater participation and greater involvement in the democratic process. If the position is not filled by an election, my understanding is that it is filled by an appointment thereafter.
yep.
So I don't really see an issue. In terms of the cost, while I don't know the cost of adding another line to the ballot, or another couple lines to the ballot for the purpose of electing zoning board officials, I imagine that it's rather minimal, and that it certainly does not outweigh the benefits of opening up greater democratic processes to the individuals of this town.
I would agree. I think the cost is irrelevant. I'm more concerned about people who do not want to campaign. Trust me, putting your name in for election is not fun. And I suspect that people who've been appointed might agree with me, but it's just my opinion. I could be wrong, and at this point, it's an opinion. So, is there any further discussion?
I think the only thing that people have not discussed about this is that you get the chance to come along where you almost get like a unicorn. I'll give an example. Last year we had some vacancies in the budget committee, and there was actually someone sitting in this audience who was written in who chose to take that position, Mr. Ellison Badger, and he has shined so greatly on that position. So perhaps if someone comes forward and suggests somebody else, and they say, hey, you know, I might be up for that task, I don't think we should pigeonhole ourselves as a town to not think that way. Because in the end, you know what? Someone's going to get appointed if it doesn't get filled anyways, right?
You're right.
So why not give more democracy?
That's, yeah.
Well, I still think it's going to be more likely to discourage people, but you know, again, that's my opinion. So all those in favor of putting this on...
Can I speak?
Yes, Tony, please.
I see us banter back and forth about all this stuff. I'm going to tell you, I've lived in town my whole life. People have to step up to the plate. All you're going to do by doing this election thing is you're going to get people writing in Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck.
Yeah.
You're going to get them writing in stupid stuff,
Right.
which takes more time when you're counting ballots.
Right.
That's
If
true.
anybody in this town wants to serve, and you people have put the word out there
Over and
that there
over.
are openings, okay, to donate your time to the town, I don't think you need to go through and have somebody have to vote. When we go to the polls right now, everybody's sick of voting when they go in there.
Right.
Because we litter the thing with so many things. Okay? And I'm just going to tell you, the Democratic Society, step up to the plate, do your job, that's democratic. Okay? We're all free people. I stand out here in the hallway tonight and listen to you guys argue. It's sickening. To me, personally, as a lifelong resident here in the town of Ashland.
Yep. I would
Okay.
agree with you, Tony.
And it's all being recorded on that thing right there.
And it makes us look really good, too.
Okay?
Yeah,
I'm
I
sick
know.
of hearing people say, well, I got my popcorn and my soda, I'm watching the Ashland
Right,
Selectboard.
right.
Okay? I
Yep.
have pride in this town, and I don't like it when that goes on.
I agree with you, Tony.
Okay, so
Thank you.
everybody on the board needs to man up, be adults, as you said, Mr. Sivalingam, be adults, okay? I get sick of people saying that. We all know we're all adults, so we all need to start acting like that, okay? I mean, it's just, you have to let volunteers volunteer. You were a big proponent about people volunteering. right? You wanted people to volunteer at my police department, but that just can't happen. Volunteers can't come to a police department and volunteer to work because they have to have certification at one point in time.
Chief Randall, let me ask you a question.
Sure, you can.
Were you singling me out? Were you intending to
No,
single me out?
no, I'm not.
Okay.
Okay? If I was gonna single you out, I would've come right after you, because everybody knows me, okay? That's
Okay, thank you, Tony, I think you've made your point.
So I think what needs to happen in the best interest of the town is that we all get along, communicate with one another. There seems to be like
What a
a lack
novel
of
concept.
communication. All this stuff that was aired out here, because of our transparency everybody wants to try to bring forward, could have been done in probably a more tactful manner with emails back and forth to one another.
Well,
about-
we can't do that for right to know, but.
some type of communication about, you know, there's an issue, let's table this and we'll try to bring it up at the next
Yep.
meeting.
That's what work sessions are supposed to be
That's,
for.
well, this is a work session.
Anyways.
Yeah, thank you. All right, all those in favor of putting this on the warrant,
Thank
please
you,
say
Tony.
aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay. Conflict of interest.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
So again, Mr. Smith and I talked about this, and as you can see, RSA 31:39-A permits for a conflict of interest ordinance. So I really wanted to put it before the board for consideration. I know that earlier in my tenure, there was discussion about conflict of interest for familial or marital reasons. Is that something that's of interest to have an ordinance for that? There might be other reasons why somebody, or other elements of a conflict of interest ordinance. So I'm really putting this up because I think it's a point of discussion for the board to consider. And the language hasn't been drafted for it. All you see is really the actual RSA present. So I don't anticipate that such a warrant article could be drafted tonight, but if it was of interest, I think that then we'd probably have to meet subsequently, maybe even with council to, you know, effectively draft that, so.
I think we
Yes.
do have something in our personnel policy as far as married couples and who can be on a
Yeah,
council.
yeah, you can't have
A married
board-
couple can't,
Yeah.
or also
Yeah.
in employment. Don't we
Right.
have?
You can't
employment
hire
that you can't- yeah.
family members. Yeah, that's
Board
very
has
clear.
code of
Yeah,
ethics, too.
Yeah, right. And, you know, we are governed, at least the select board governed, in a sense, with already RSA, with conflict of interest, which is 95-1, which states that no person holding an elective office in any political subdivision / town shall, except by competitive bidding, buy or sell goods of value in excess of $200 to or from the political subdivision under which he holds office. Please note that if one is found in violation of this statute, it is a misdemeanor punishable by up to 1 year in jail. We have an Ashland Code of Ethics, which frankly, I would much rather sign off on. This is something that the previous board, Norm, Steve Felton, Jeanette Stewart, and myself signed off on. I'd rather see this come back and sign off on a new one, because this covers all those elements of conflict of interest. The key factors: maintaining confidentiality, proper use of authority, ensuring financial disclosure, treating people fairly and equally. The scope is to all public servants in town government, whether they are elected, appointed, full-time, part-time, paid, or unpaid. And the purpose of this policy is to ensure that public servants hold their positions for the benefit of the public and efficiency, and faithfully perform their duties under the laws of the federal, state, and local governments. I mean, there's a lot of stuff spelled out in here, and I would be happy to share this with the rest of the board if you don't have it. I would think that this would be a much better thing to sign off on, because it covers more than just conflict of interest, which can be kind of nebulous, but.
Then why don't we go ahead, if you would give us all copies of that, and we could,
I can send it to you.
Yeah, if you could send that, Charlie.
We could research that and
Take a look at that.
discuss
I
it
think
at our
that
next meeting.
That certainly covers conflict
And then
of
we can
interest.
see what conflict of interest, how that's covered in here.
You know,
And the personnel,
there are
and the
ethics.
personnel policy.
There are
we should be
ethics in
looking at,
here:
too.
confidential information, misuse of position, disclosure, fairness, enforcement. I mean, anything that you might see in a conflict of interest RSA is going to be covered by adopting this code of ethics. And I mean, I've
And that
signed
would
it
be
before.
that would be for our town.
It would be for our town.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
Is that it? Okay.
I have one.
Yes, yes, Harold.
Yeah, earlier we were discussing how going about things properly and how things have happened certain ways and how we want to make a stepping stone for moving things forward. And I had devised a thought process of putting our people first. It's a great thought. And I came up with something I would like the board to consider for a warrant article. And it goes as follows. Shall the town of Ashland prescribe that no structure, be it a building, pole, tower, or sign, be built on, and in capitals, town-owned land, greater in height than 65 feet. This is the will of the people and an act of direct governance by the legislative body of the town of Ashland. Now, this goes back to the argument we had about how the telephone pole was too, the flagpole was too tall in the park, and how the complaints about the electric department building was too tall, and it just seems that there is no direct verbiage as to instructing what can and cannot be done on town land. You know, everybody cries wolf that we're government and we're exempt. Well, I think it's time that our townspeople hold our town liable and put down some groundwork for us to adhere to. And because it is only the town land, it's not a land use item. It is a Board of Select item. It is our place to decide that. And I'd like to see this go on the warrant article this March.
Has this been reviewed by Walter yet?
It's
And
two
any language?
sentences.
It's 2 sentences.
No.
It still needs to be reviewed.
Well, we have till next meeting.
Yeah,
I just got it
yeah.
Yeah, you have
today.
I tried to outreach to Charlie in all respect on Thursday and
Yeah.
Friday, and
No, that's fine,
Yeah.
and that's fine, and, you know, I mean, we can discuss it in principle, but I certainly would want the wording reviewed by legal before we voted on it. You know, and I appreciate your concerns, but yes, Susan,
Fine by
as
me.
land use person.
I just want to say as an alternative to that is any town can vote that their municipality has to follow all their municipal rules, which would mean everything in the zoning ordinance would, the town itself would have to adhere to. Because at the moment, you also have on town property a water tower that's way higher than what you are.
yes, there is. But that's already constructed, isn't it? Therefore, it would not be new construction, right? It's already there.
But if they needed a second water tower, for
So
example.
you'd be
and-
replacing it, wouldn't be, okay, so
Well,
maybe
they could-
maybe the verbiage
Yeah.
needs to be new construction.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm fine with exploring verbiage.
Okay.
You know, and
No,
I have no
right
concept
there.
of how high 65 feet is.
5 feet shorter than the telephone pole, which represents our nation. I mean, the flagpole in the
Oh,
park.
okay.
That's 70 feet, and I remember the discussion
All
on
right,
this Saturday
all right.
board when we had that very
Well-
fruitful discussion about how some people thought it was too tall, some people thought it wasn't tall enough, and I just think there needs to be a baseline.
Well, then I would suggest we research this a little bit more and discuss it at our next meeting.
Vote on it at our next meeting.
Yeah, so Charlie, if you could run this by Walter, and, you know, if there's anything that land use people can give us that might be pertinent, I'd appreciate that too.
When you put it in front of Walter, could you just put in the word new
In front of
structure?
Yeah.
structure.
Thank you.
Do you have
Okay.
it?
Yeah, he has a copy.
That new structure.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else on warrant article discussion? Board of Selectmen upcoming schedule. Charlie?
Yes, I thought January 10th would be probably a good starting date to have the bond hearing for Thompson Street. Like I said, we have to post, last date we can post is the 9th, last date to have the public hearing is January 16th.
Okay. So what date is the 10th?
Yeah, what's that follow?
What,
I believe it's,
I'm gonna get my electronic
It's a
right now.
Wednesday.
It's a
I think it's
Wednesday?
a Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
It's
Oh.
Tuesday because
Oh.
the budget committee is gonna meet on the
Okay.
11th.
Yep.
Because the 9th is, yeah. Wait, no.
The 10th is a Wednesday by my calendar.
Yes,
See?
it's also a public hearing for the zoning amendments for the planning board.
That's
Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So how about,
You can,
what about the
you can
9th?
pick
Can
any
you do the
day. We
9th?
just we have to notify 7 days in advance.
Could we do the 9th? The 9th?
For a
Sorry.
hearing?
For that hearing instead of the 10th?
Sure. Yeah.
Is that okay with everybody? That's a Tuesday?
Fine with me.
Okay? The 9th?
Tuesday the 9th.
Yes. Last date to post so we can post it before January 9th, but
Yeah.
January 9th would be the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Going forward,
6 o'clock at the school cafeteria.
okay?
Okay. And moving on, what days would the board prefer to meet for the,
January?
yeah, January meetings.
Well, the 1st is New Year's Day and the 15th is Martin Luther King Day, so can we do it the 2nd and the 16th?
You can.
Is there
We
any-
are open the 15th. I just
Uh-huh.
wasn't sure being the holiday.
Yeah,
So Tuesdays.
January 2nd is Tuesday.
Yeah.
The
Now,
16th
don't we
is
have something
Tuesday.
else the 16th?
No. No.
Those are fine with me.
problems?
Same day as water and sewer.
Yeah,
The school board is meeting here on the 2nd.
on the 2nd. Okay.
Yeah.
We could meet
In the caf.
in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Do we know, will Timmy Baker TV be able to be present at those?
We
meetings?
don't know. We'll have to check with them.
Are you gonna be able to be here?
We'll figure it out.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
I'll let you know.
Okay?
Okay, and when does the board like to get together to complete the default budget?
We need to do that soon,
You have to do it by, it has to be ready for the budget committee's public hearing,
which is
the 11th.
the 11th.
Into next week.
Yeah,
How about the end of next week?
the end of next week is Christmas. I don't think so.
Christmas is a Monday.
Well, it's Christmas weekend.
Christmas weekend, so.
No, no, I meant the end, I meant like the 27th, 28th.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
28th.
I got you.
You know
Yeah,
what I
like
mean?
the 29th, 30th.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no objection to either of those days. Could we do Monday night, the 29th to,
That's a
Wait.
Friday.
oh, I'm looking at January, sorry. Yes, it helps if I'm in the right year.
So we
Okay.
have the 2nd and the 16th as our meetings.
December.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 28th,
January 3rd?
January 3rd.
Did you say that was a no?
We have room.
Yeah, it's planning board that night.
No. That's what it was.
For the fire department, they have it.
28th and the 3rd.
Yeah, the 27th and the 3rd
Oh,
are planning board meetings.
I'll be at planning board.
But what about the 28th? That's a Thursday. 28th is planning board?
planning board.
On a Thursday? 27th of December is a Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, 27th, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 28th of December?
Sounds all right
Could
with
we
me.
do that? So that would give us 2 dates? With any luck, we'll get most of it done.
And at what time and place?
6 o'clock,
Here?
if we can get it.
And
I
they're
don't know.
closed.
That's right.
Oh, well, we could do it in
What
the
about the
conference
lot?
room. We could do it at the town hall.
We can do it at
Town
town
hall,
hall.
all right.
Yeah,
That
So
would be our
28th.
first one coming up,
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
Town Hall, Charlie?
our first
Yep.
meeting.
Okay, so everyone knows, we're all on the same page.
yes.
Public hearing, January 9th for the bond on Thompson Street at 6 PM in the cafeteria. January 2nd and the 16th will be our regular meeting in the workshop.
Where are those here?
Yep. Those will be here. And December 28th at 6 PM, Town Hall to complete the default budget.
Okay.
What did we say, the 28th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at 6 o'clock. All right, so you put that out in an email just so we're, okay. Anything else we need to discuss in terms of getting together to finish our budget or our warrant article? When is the last date for
Jamie has a question.
petition warrant articles?
January 9th.
Okay,
Have you done estimated revenues for the budget? Selectmen are supposed to estimate revenues.
Right.
As is the budget.
yep, I don't think we've done that yet.
No.
Lacking a finance person, we will get that done. Thank you, David.
Usually it's finance person.
Yep.
Yes, it's been a little bit of a problem in the town hall, so
They will be ready.
they will be ready.
By the
But
public
thank you
hearing.
for the reminder.
The selectmen have to vote on it.
Yes, we understand that, thank you. Okay, anything else, Charlie?
No.
Okay, any liaison reports?
Moi.
Okay,
I got a few.
okay,
Planning Board, at our last meeting, we had a presentation by Mike Azard from the Lakes Region Planning Commission on our proposed groundwater/drinking water protection ordinance, which is going to be offered to the voters in March. We reworded the purpose to appear in the warrant to make it clearer to the public. So it's going to state, the purpose of this ordinance is in the interest of public health, safety, and general welfare, to preserve, maintain, and protect from contamination the existing ground and drinking water supply area. This will be accomplished by regulating land uses which could contribute pollutants to the municipal well, parentheses, needed for present and future public water supply, end parentheses. Oh, which could possibly contribute pollutants, excuse me.
Okay.
And that's how we agreed to word that.
And congratulations to that committee. You did some really good work to pull that together. Thanks
and
to
thank you,
LRPC.
Mardine and Mike. And just as a note, Mr. Zard is leaving LRPC at the end of this year. Pemmy River made 2 on-site visits to Campton Sand and Gravel and a private residence in Thornton in November. We discussed keeping up with the matrix and tracking contaminants into the river and the testing process. And we're not going to meet again until January. Heritage Commission held their meeting last week in the middle of that big snowstorm. When I assumed
Yay
that,
for you.
when I assumed, which is wrong, that it would be canceled, and I couldn't get off Whooperton Mountain until the next day. But they had a quorum, and Susan was nice enough to write up this summary. 4th of July Fund. It is as updated as Finance Officer Mayor can get it. Final balance needs to be reconciled by the Town Treasurer and Town Finance Officer to include interest from July to the present and all deposits. The Commission has voted to transfer that balance to the BOS when that board holds a public hearing to accept it into a separate non-lapsing account under its jurisdiction. To begin in 2018, but will be an ongoing project for people to submit photos of their homes with them in the photo optional for the historical record. The Heritage Commission has set up a Facebook page, thanks to Katie Mayer, where people can post photos and view photos of the town. The page name is Ashland Heritage. I think we've all seen old-time photos of families used to pose out in front of their homesteads every year. That's what we're trying to look for.
Are you just looking for historic homes?
No, any home.
Oh, okay.
Any home. We want to have a record of our town.
Oh, nice.
A Peace Party, which is also being called Squamstock, is a planned summer event in 2018 to recognize our shared heritage with Holderness, the town Ashland was part of from 1761 to 1868. To be celebrated with a fun rapprochement, which is renewal of diplomatic ties, thank you, Susan, party. Art activities are geared to our youngest generation. The Commission has or will be approaching the schools, recreation department, libraries, and historical societies of both towns to coordinate their participation and their fundraising efforts to support children's programs focused on art or history. All other organizations interested in joining in are welcome. July 1st was official declaration day of the town split and was a tentative date chosen, but all details have yet to be worked out, so nothing has been finalized.
Okay.
There's also going to be a proposal that we rejoin the town of Holderness because their taxes are a lot lower.
I'm for that. I'm for that.
And the Commission set up a tentative schedule of short programs that focus on our local historic buildings and cultural events. The first one will be at the end of February on the history of Town Hall.
Excellent. Thank you, Lee. Any other liaison reports? No, hearing none. Public comments? Yes?
So I just wanted to state for the record that at the last meeting, as far as I was concerned, and this was all new to me, as far as the rights-based ordinance goes, I don't believe there was a citizens action group that actually existed before A, we put a name to it, and B, I stood up and said, I volunteer. So other people who may have had interest in volunteering prior to that, first of all, I had no knowledge of, and I don't think that constituted that there was any kind of organization before that point.
Okay.
I just want to make that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Yes, Representative McGilliard.
I just wanted to say that I'm new at this and I'm ramping up. And of the 5 towns in my district, Ashland and Grafton are the 2 that I'm least familiar with. So I'm here this evening, and you are indeed a lively bunch.
We are.
I would also say that having served on a school board for 10 years, I am very familiar with concerns over process. And I share your issue with respect to trying to do things properly. 2 points I did want to mention with respect to the RVO situation. The first is, as a very conservative Republican, I have adopted an idea that is being co-sponsored by several Democrats, and now along with myself and Representative Darrow, also of this district, to try to get the help that we're going to need to deal with the cart before the horse issue, or the chicken or the egg scenario, on giving teeth to a constitutional, or with a constitutional amendment for a rights-based ordinance. And the reason that CELDEF is doing their engagement thing in the manner in which they do is entirely up to them. I have no knowledge of why it's necessary. But it does require the exchange of $1 financial consideration, which I believe is what makes it a contract. And so I wanted to clarify that it wasn't a big commitment, it's just a commitment. And that's, I think, what the legitimate concern over. So I wanted to acknowledge that.
Okay.
However, there are already 11 towns in the state of New Hampshire that do have RVOs in place. And there was absolutely no intent on anyone's part to make Ashland a guinea pig. So I just want to express concern over that. But the rest of the advice that, and I'm not an attorney, but I anticipated, as a result of learning in the workshop, that there would be legal advice given that says that there's no teeth to it, which is the reason I came here. I need help in the legislature to have towns decide to go forward, and then is that the chicken or the egg? It's that situation. So I just wanted to clarify that, and also suggest, and just as a reminder, that when I learned about what the process was for the rights-based approach to things, I went in there with an open mind, but very concerned because, frankly, this is something that's advocated by the opposing party to which I am a member. Okay, I'm not a Democrat, I'm a Republican. That said, this board put me in Concord. I was hoping to do this starting next November, but be that as it may. I determined that as a result of seeing in the workshop what it was they teach you and enlighten you with, that it was worthwhile for the constituents in this district who oppose Northern Pass for the most part, not everyone, probably should consider.
Okay.
So that's the reason that we're going forward with this, and that I think it should be clear that to the citizens of Ashland, whatever you all decide as a select board, that it's very likely that you'll probably have a petition warrant article to go forward, and maybe the townspeople may decide differently.
And that's fine.
And that's,
They have that right, absolutely have that right.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to be clear that that may happen, because that's part of the workshop, is to train everybody on what the options are. And Wednesday evening, it's happening again in Bridgewater. And then on January 6th, it's happening again in Bristol at the town hall.
Okay.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. Any other comments? No? No? Okay, seeing none. I will ask for a motion to go into non-public according to RSA 91A.
Just briefly, I just wanted to let the board know, as you know, my wife is 9 months pregnant.
Yes.
She asked that I get home as close to 8 o'clock as possible.
Please go.
I'd like to.
Please go.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
and congratulations
Yes.
if we don't see you.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, I still need a motion to go into non-public according to RSA 91A:3, Roman numeral 2B, the hiring of any person.
I'll make that motion, yeah.
Is there a second?
That's a second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, 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 yes.